Hello and welcome to the Rask Network. What you're about to hear and see is limited to general financial information only. Please be sure to speak to your financial planner or refer to our financial services guide available at rask.com.au/FSG before acting on the information.
Welcome to the Australian Retirement Podcast. It is a pleasure to be here, and I'm here with Wadzi Nenzou. How are you today?
Hey, James. Lovely to be here. Thanks for having me.
This is going to be, I say fun. It's not a particularly fun topic, but it's something that is incredibly important, particularly for retirees and pre-retirees, and that's, of course, scams.
Yep.
Now, if I may, I'd love to jump in by getting a bit of an understanding of your situation and how did you come to be an expert in this area?
Yeah, it's a very interesting story actually, because a lot of people are like to me, investment scams, such a niche topic. How did you actually start being interested in it? And it was very roundabout way. It's not like I, grew up as a young girl in Zimbabwe thinking that I'm going to talk about investment scams. But what happened was I've been working in financial services for, I can't believe it, this year will be 19 years, end of this year. Wow.
All right.
Showing my age.
Uh-huh.
And so in financial services, obviously, I've worked in different areas, financial planning, places like that, banks, superannuation, different kind of elements of it. But I also have at the same time run a financial education business. So that was focusing on teaching Australian ladies about investing, about finance, about superannuation, all that stuff. So what actually happened during COVID, I did a course on teaching Australian ladies about share investing. Mm-hmm. So they were interested in learning more about the share market. So I taught them the basics of it. And we were having fun. We were, getting into it, delving into investing. And then unfortunately, I started hearing stories of them losing money to scams. Mm. And at that point, to be honest, I hadn't really looked into investment scams. Obviously, like everyone, I knew they existed, but they were kind of like a, peripheral thing away from my consciousness. And then when I started to actually know of people in my circle who were trying to invest their money and they started losing this money, I started looking more into it. And I was shocked by the statistics and what I actually found out. And I remember in 2022, specifically hearing that about Australians lost $3.1 billion in scams overall. But out of that, they lost half of that was all investment scams. Yeah. So investment scams, they were the biggest losses for Australians. And that continued 2023 as well. It was about a little bit less, like 1.3. But again, it was also about half the amount. And I realized what a big problem investment scams were. And then I started just teaching. At first, I was teaching the ladies that I'd been teaching about the share market. I started telling them about scams and the red flags. And then I started posting about it on social media, talking about it at events, and I started getting noticed. And then I started talking in like ABC about it. And it's just blown up because it's such a big problem. And I'm very passionate about people actually investing their money without getting scammed. So that's actually now become a main focus for me. Yeah.
I mean, it really is tragic for so many people in the sense that people are putting their money in with this thinking about return on investment, and really the focus, especially with that initial outlay, is actually return of investment. Making sure that losing those investments, it can I've seen similarly just how destructive it can be for someone's finances.
It absolutely devastates people, and I think for me that's the part that really got me fixated on focusing on it, because I actually started to learn about people, of cases, and how it absolutely devastates them, not just financially, but emotionally and mentally as well.
So, I can imagine.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know we're going to jump into this in a lot of detail, and I can appreciate that a lot of people are going to want some detail here. So, but I was doing a little bit of research here, and one thing that I was really surprised at, I was doing research on the history of scams. Now, scams are a type of fraud, and I was surprised to learn that the first recorded case of fraud was in 300 BC.
Yeah.
And that blew me away, because I thought that would be much, much earlier than that, in an anthropological sense.
Yeah.
Like we've been stealing from one another for much longer than that, right? Why is it that fraud has been so late versus the idea of theft? I mean, what's the difference between stealing and fraud?
Well, I mean, And okay, I'm going to also say in terms of, it's the first recorded, probably not the first.
Yeah, I think that's
case,
fair to say. Yeah.
Right? So it's the first recorded, but obviously there probably was cases of fraud which just weren't recorded before 300 BC or whatever. Yeah. So it's so fascinating, the whole world of fraud, the way even people view fraud versus stealing is, I find fascinating, because a lot of people, when they think of stealing, for them it's clear that the thief is the criminal.
Yes.
And, they come into your house, they steal your belongings, they come out, it's like, it's clear that you're the victim, they're the criminal. But when it comes to fraud, it's a very interesting kind of case where some people, it's not like they think you're the criminal, but they don't view you in the same way as they do if like a thief literally walks in and
despite
steals
the fact
from you.
that the intention was still to take the money. And
exactly. It's weird because they don't view you in that same way. It's like, that's a thief.
Yes.
It's still a thief, but they feel like, oh, you shouldn't have fallen for that. That you were part of it. You actually did something or volunteered, whether it's information, volunteered your resources, the financial resources. So there's that kind of element of blaming the victim. Which is very different from like a thief situation.
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that, because thinking about like, for example, that white collar crimes, as we speak of them, the idea that someone might make a fraudulent insurance claim, for example, where they say, oh, this was stolen when it wasn't really stolen. That is stealing. There's no way around it. That is stealing. But because there's that one layer removed, there was a misrepresentation which resulted in me getting this, rather than me unlocking the insurer's bank account and stealing $1,500 or whatever the amount is. And, it's looked at differently. In an ethical sense, it's perceived differently.
Which is bizarre, because like you said, it is stealing. It doesn't matter how if you've gone about it directly or indirectly. It's still the same thing. Yeah.
Well, that was the insurance fraud. That was the original recorded fraud in 300 BC. It was two Greek sea merchants, Hegestratos and Xenosthemis. I hope I've got those right. My apologies for my terrible Greek pronunciation. And they devised a plan to enrich themselves by taking out insurance on their ship and cargo, which that was called bottomry. And they sailed the ship out and then sought to destroy it so that they could keep all of the money. It didn't work out too well. I think that they were caught in the act, and then
I think they drowned, didn't they?
Hegestratos tried to escape from there and died, and Xenosthemis was captured and then thrown before the courts and didn't have a good time of it. But if we move across, that's fraud. But if we move across to financial fraud specifically, which is probably closer to our conversation, we have to go forward about 500 years for that, and that was 193 AD. The Roman Empire had just been overthrown by the Praetorian Guard, and they offered the Roman Empire to the highest bidder, who was essentially going to pay the soldiers the highest amount. And a bloke called Julianus appeared and said, I'll give 25,000 shekels or whatever the currency was at the time, but I know it's 25,000 to say I will give that to each one of the soldiers and I'll become emperor. And so the issue was, of course, that the soldiers didn't have the ability to sell the Roman Empire because it wasn't theirs. And so Julianus not only was emperor for about 3 months, but then he was overthrown. And of course, when you get overthrown in Roman Empire days, you tend to get killed in the process. So he was emperor.
Usually.
Yeah, that's right. So he paid a really big price for that fraud. But that's a big thing to defraud someone with, like the Roman Empire.
That's like on another level.
Yeah.
Even the scammers nowadays would be impressed with that level of scamming.
Yeah, that's really thinking outside the box. Yeah. So if I may, let's talk about retirees and pre-retirees, because this is a topic which is incredibly important for those people. Can I ask, why does the topic of scams, why is it more important or incredibly important for retirees and pre-retirees versus other age demographics?
Yeah, so listen, I mean, investment scammers, they want to scam anyone they can get money from. However, they're very clever enough to know that for pre-retirees and retirees, they've had decades of accumulating their investments. So they tend to have more money in their superannuation funds or in other investments. So they know that they've accumulated wealth. They're about to retire or they've retired. And so they've got some money available. So they're going to target them. And the statistics will show that 65 and over, unfortunately, are very much overrepresented in the losses, especially investment scam losses. And this is obviously a problem for a lot of retirees and pre-retirees because they don't have that, I call it like the runway, the airport runway, where when you're in your 20s, you've got, if you're scammed and you lose some money.
Yeah. If you make a mistake, you've got enough time to fix that.
You've got time, right? You've got decades to grow that wealth back. But if you're like a pre-retiree or retiree, you don't really have the same airport runway that a 20-year-old would have. So losing some of it or most of it, which has happened to many, unfortunately, most of their retirement funds is devastating for them financially and emotionally in many ways. So that's a big problem and something that you have to be very careful with as a retiree. And another thing as well, with retirees, they're just more vulnerable in many ways, because a lot of them at that stage, either they're separated or they're widowed or and they're lonely. So there's those type of scammers who use the romance route and take advantage of that loneliness to get them into investing in dodgy schemes. And there's also just lack of financial literacy, right? I mean, this is something that affects every age group. It's not just pre-retirees and retirees, but when it comes to obviously things like scams, and especially when you look at the technologically advanced scams that are happening now, there's a lot of illiteracy around that for retirees as well. And the scammers know how to take advantage of that.
You've said that really well. I'm thinking about one particular case that in terms of loneliness that was quite dear to me. It was a friend of ours that was in a relationship with like an overseas relationship. He hadn't met her before, had a lot of the red flags. And this would have been probably about 5 years ago or thereabouts. And he single man for a long time. His friends were all saying like, hey, let's just do a little bit more research on this woman, because like, for example, we learned that he's giving her some money here and there to support her, and like it wasn't looking good. And the suggestion came because he had photos. He said, look, I've got photos of her and things like that, and we speak and so on. And the suggestion from one of our mutual friends was, let's do a reverse image search on the photos. That's not all that difficult. We'll just get the photos and let's just see where they were sourced. Are they original or are they just being extracted from the internet somewhere? And what amazed me is that he didn't want to do it. And I think it speaks to that idea of loneliness. There's a quote in Catch Me If You Can, that movie with Leonardo DiCaprio, Tom Hanks, all about defrauding the FBI and the like. And he says, sometimes it's easier to live the lie. And I think especially as you're lonely,
you want to hold on to that feeling, to that relationship, even if part of you, because we're human beings, when he's not an idiot. He knows partly there's something suspicious about this. Potentially it's a scam or a scammer, but he doesn't want that reality to sink in yet. So they hold on to that. And scammers are so good at human or social engineering. They know the buttons to push and how to reel people in and keep them in, unfortunately. I can go down a very big kind of rabbit hole around romance and investment scams, because it's really blown up. And it's known as pig butchering scams. It's a major global problem.
Okay. Well, we may very well move to this, because what I'd like to talk to is around the major red flags that exist in terms of looking out for scams and knowing when to avoid them. I'd love to get your perspectives on the big things that retirees and pre-retirees should be focused on in order to avoid, paying that huge price.
Yeah, sure. So there's so many kind of red flags out there, but I wanted to choose kind of what I feel are like the big ones, because there's a lot of other ones I'm not going to talk about, but these are ones that I feel like you really need to be on top of or to think of. So one big one, and this is like probably my big one, unsolicited contact of any type. I don't care where it's coming from, whether it's a phone call or SMS, an email, social media, any type of unsolicited contact of any type is a big red flag. And it doesn't really matter whether it's coming from someone who says they're from the bank that you bank with, or from your super, or they are coming from the ATO, anything like that. If they're asking you for personal information, your financial information, or anything that makes you feel uncomfortable and you haven't solicited it, that's a big red flag, and you should be very cautious about that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can I say, I welcome your comments on this. It drives me nuts. It truly does, that we have legitimate businesses in Australia, legitimate financial institutions that are in the practice of calling you and saying, hi, my name's Tom from XYZ company, whether it's a bank or a telco or whatever it would be, and saying, just before the call's recorded, can I just confirm I'm speaking to this person? Cool. Can you confirm your account number, your date of birth, your like that blows me away, because yes, we know that this call is authentic, for whatever reason, you might know that call is authentic. But it paves the way for that to be the standard.
Exactly.
And it kills me. Because, I can't believe that, the implications of that being the normal way to verify yourself when you get called by one of those institutions means that it's just the easiest way in for any scammer.
For any scammer, exactly. They can do exactly that. And that's exactly what they do with a lot of the bank impersonation scams. They call you saying they're from NAB, and they're so good now at the phone number cloning that it will literally be saying it's coming from NAB. So then how is someone supposed to know that that's not NAB? Yeah.
Well, okay. Anyway, I could rant about that myself for a long time. So
I agree with you. Yeah.
Unsolicited contact of any type.
Yeah,
that's a huge red flag from the get-go.
That's a huge red flag. And another big red flag is just people pressuring you, like this sense of kind of urgency. You need to get into this investment scheme right now. Otherwise, you're going to miss out, because legitimate investments will give you time to actually research, to look into it, to whether it's days or weeks of actually checking it out. So if you have somebody who's, being aggressive and pushing you to quickly make a decision, then it's probably 99.99% a scam.
Yes. Yeah. Can I say I've actually learned that lesson firsthand, not from an investment scam, but I was traveling with my wife. We're in a taxi, and we're in Vietnam, and the color denominations of the notes are similar to Australia. They're all different. Yeah. But the 10 and the 100 are both blue.
Yeah.
And so I was just working out and fixing it all up. And then all of a sudden the energy changed, and he was like, okay, come on, out. And it sort of came out of nowhere, and I sort of, okay, we'll get out. Okay. And he drives away. Yeah. And 5 minutes later, the penny dropped about that. Yeah. The thing that I should have realized was, obviously I made the mistake of giving him 100 and thinking it was a 10, and he exploited that. Yeah. But the thing that should have really stood out to me is, like, why has suddenly the intensity changed?
Yes.
Why is there this sudden urgency that wasn't there before? Let's stop and let's just take stock of what's happened in the last few minutes, because maybe I've missed something here,
Exactly. That's the thing. Like, the minute you feel that weird urgency or just aggressiveness or anything, like, just, major caution. Just stop and think for yourself, okay, is this legit? What's happening here? Very most likely it's a scammer.
Yeah. Okay. So people pressuring you, sense of urgency, huh?
Exactly. So that's a big one. Another one is, so with lovely AI coming into the mix, in the last few years, there's been a big explosion of deep fake videos, like of Elon Musk, of the British PM. This happened like 2 years ago, of, celebrities endorsing some investment scheme of some sort. So celebrity endorsements of any type. So it could be an actual fake video of a celebrity or well-known person, or it could be like fake news story that, Trump is, promoting this thing or this investment scheme or whatever, the minute you see that, run away from it.
Yes.
That is a scam.
Yeah.
Because first of all, mostly those are actually fake. I mean, none of those well-known people are pushing any of those investment schemes. And even if they are, they're not investment experts anyway. So why should you be listening to them? So that's a big red flag. And especially with AI and the voice and audio cloning and everything, the minute you see that, run away from it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really wonder to what extent that's going to evolve in the future, because I agree with you. If you see, Elon Musk promoting something, some obscure thing, you might be like, hopefully most people would look at that and say that's unusual, and that'd raise the red flags. But the idea of, for example, deepfake videos of children saying, "Hey, mum, can you just wire me some money because I'm stuck?"
Yes.
That's a real thing too now, right?
That is. So the "Hey, mom" phone calls, they're not really big in Australia as much yet, but I think in America and where else? Europe, I think, where literally they might get a voice recording of your child. And they're usually older children in this case, and they'll call screaming saying, "Mom, this is happening. I need you to send me money right now," and they're in danger. And so many, and they're targeting elderly people. And and of course, because they're not, and this started happening a few years ago. So at that stage, a lot of people didn't even know that it was possible for anyone to do voice cloning. So it wasn't in the top of their mind, that they're not exactly literate technologically wise. So they would hear that and they would just send them money because it's their child and they're in danger. So yes, I think it's actually really crazy how that is going to be a big element. AI is definitely playing a big part already, and it's just going to continue evolving with any new technologies that come up as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Frightening.
Yeah.
Yep. Carry on.
All right. So another red flag, and now this is the one we're probably going to talk a bit more about. We were talking about if you have an online friend or romantic partner that you've not actually met face to face. Let's say you've been talking to them for weeks or you've been talking to them for months, and all of a sudden things have, turned a bit. They started to talk about how they're making money through some crypto investments, or you start seeing them sharing their lifestyle and it's a fancy lifestyle, and you start asking them, "Oh, how are you making money?" And they start talking about, "Oh, I'm an investor and this is how I make money." And they start trying to get you into it. That's a huge red flag. And you should, cut contact with that person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's an important distinction there. If that event happens, the solution is to just cut contact. It's not to try to understand and ask more questions and get it from their perspective, because that's an ideal outcome for a scammer. They're very well equipped to handle those.
They're ready for those questions. They're ready to reel you in.
Yeah.
So if you see, especially someone who maybe you've been trying to meet face to face and they've been dodging it, they haven't made it possible for you. But then all of a sudden they want talking about investing, just cut it off. So there's a scam called a pig butchering scam. This is what it actually is.
Sounds nice.
Yeah, it sounds lovely, doesn't it? A lot of people are like, why is it called that? Because it sounds exactly as horrible as it sounds. It's like fattening pigs for slaughter. You know that saying?
Yes.
That is literally what some organized crime rings, by the way. Because back in the day, a lot of people, when they think of scammers, they think about the Nigerian prince emails, back in the day.
I just feel for those Nigerian princes that really did have a need, and we're just reaching out to innocent people.
Those poor princes, man, they're just, left in the lurch. They're like, but I actually do need some cash. But,
that small era was a really bad time for Nigerian. Like, they would have thrived in any other time.
I felt so bad for them.
Me too.
But yeah, so nowadays, unfortunately, we actually have actual organized crime rings with compounds, especially in Southeast Asia. So Cambodia, Laos, they literally have compounds with thousands of scammers talking to potential victims every day. And what they're doing is usually pig butchering, which is they're not just jumping in and asking for your money out of the blue. They're looking for people who are lonely, people who want friends, people mostly who want romantic relationships, who want a human connection. They're pretending that they're, falling in love with them. They're building trust over weeks, over months, and then they're reeling them in with,
something happening with my family and I need help.
Exactly. I need help. Exactly what happened to your friend that you were mentioning before, or in the case of investments, they'll start talking about investment schemes.
Yeah.
So that's a big global problem because what they do, they really they drain people dry. So they don't just wait for like little amounts. They do it over a period of time so that they drain as much as possible. And then the minute that they realize that this person doesn't have money anymore, that's when they'll disappear. So that's why globally trillions of dollars are being lost to these pig butchering scams.
Yeah.
It's a major problem.
Yeah. Okay. It's tragic, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a big red flag. The minute that there's somebody online you haven't met before talking about investment scams, run away, cut it off.
If I may, when we talk about this age group, retirees, pre-retirees, there might be some people right now that are rolling their eyes thinking, okay, I'm not going to fall for the romantic scam. It might even be a case that you're in a committed relationship and so you're listening to this thinking that's not a problem for me. But you may very well have parents that are going to move into this phase or are in this phase.
Yes.
And one of the classic things, as I understand it, I welcome your comments, is that if it's not uncommon for someone to go into a scam like this who might be, for example, in their 70s or in their 80s, but they don't tell their family. They don't tell their kids.
Yes.
They keep it to themselves. Maybe it's, I don't want to upset my children knowing that I'm in a relationship. How would they feel about that, for example? Or maybe it is that idea of it's easier to live a lie. And when I tell my kids, they're going to say, nope, you've got to stop that. And they're going to worry about me. So I'm just going to keep it to myself.
Yep, exactly right. You've nailed it.
So the quality of the conversations that you can have with your parents about this and encourage that they at least understand and they know the warning signs for it can be incredibly valuable. Even if you're listening to this thinking, come on now, I'm not, it's never going to happen to me.
Exactly. You've nailed it. A lot of people, when they hear these stories, it might be, oh, this is not relevant to me. But like you said, it could be very much relevant to your older parents or even to your younger children. Like this doesn't just happen to older people. Pig butchering, like it focuses on anyone really. So just have that conversation with your loved ones, because even if it's not relevant to you, you never know who needs to hear this, and do it in a way that's not shame-filled, because a lot of people, when they're going through something like this, they feel a lot of shame when they finally realize what has been going on. But what they don't realize is that this is a criminal who's taken advantage of their human needs. It's not their fault. They were up for just true connection and somebody took advantage of them.
Yeah.
So they shouldn't feel like it's their fault. And that's another reason people don't actually share that it's happened to them as well. It's happened to a lot of people and they just don't share it with their loved ones, so they never know what's actually happened.
I understand.
Yeah.
You got one more, right?
Yes,
Number
I
5.
do. So one of the things that you should run away from is investing because of hype. So sometimes you hear people talking about, oh, did you hear about this company or this stock or this? And you ask them, okay, how did you know about this? Oh, I saw it on social media in some sort of group that I'm in, or it's some sort of WhatsApp chat group I'm part of, or it's some sort of online forum. So there's some major scam groups that do what they call, pump and dump scams, which if you ever saw the Wolf of Wall Street movie with Leo DiCaprio, that was like a big part of the scam.
Yep.
It was to just pump up. A lot of these are like penny stocks or stocks that are not really big. Get people hyped up, people to buy into it. I mean, the scammer would have already bought at the very low price.
Yeah.
And what they're wanting with the hype is for people to think, oh my God, this is amazing. Buy it, pump up the price. And then this scammer, when the price is as high as they think it's going to be, they will sell, make a profit, dump this, and then the price will fall down. And all of a sudden you're left with these penny stocks or this low value.
Yeah.
So just don't get into the hype. And even if, let's say, you find something that you're interested in from the hype, that's fine. But research the company. Yeah. Actually do your due diligence before you invest your money in it.
Yeah, I think you've said that well. I've fallen for hype before.
Yeah.
And I've fallen for it in my early years as a financial advisor, having gone through the process of a structured process of understanding more about fraud.
Yeah.
But I fell for a different kind of hype, and it was based on shares, and I was looking to invest in Australian shares, and the way I fell for the hype is by going onto forums like, for example, Hot Copper and some of these where you get a huge amount of people just saying, this share is going to go to the moon. And you say, oh, that's amazing. Like, I can't wait to invest in that.
That's great.
Yeah. And so you've got your own bias. You're looking at this share because you think, I reckon this might be a good investment.
Yeah.
And you might have a relatively even number of people saying, this share is going to go to the moon, and other people saying, no, this share is well priced and there's really no more value in it.
Yeah.
But because you've got your own cognitive bias toward believing that it's going to go to the moon, or at least hoping that it will.
Yeah.
I made a number of investments in my share investments in my early 20s that, on reflection, I thought back to and I thought, really, that was so poorly researched. You know, it was a glance over the financials and then what a forum's saying, and that'll do. And I think that speaks to the idea that, like, do your research, but also be aware of where your biases come from.
Exactly.
People get excited and you want to believe what you want to believe.
Yeah, and you focus on exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
The evidence that's, confirms what you want, not the evidence that's saying the opposite.
Yeah.
So that is human nature again. So be aware of yourself and your own biases. That is so true. Listen, a lot of us, I've fallen for hype in the past. Most people do. It's just part of human nature. You get excited. People are excited around you, and then you just catch that same bug. But just be very, very careful. Nothing wrong with being excited about some potential investment. Just do your due diligence, though. Just do the research first before investing in it. Yeah,
and we're seeing that it's hard to quantify how much money's been lost here, but because it's not marked as a scam at this point.
Yeah.
But meme coins, for example, like if we're thinking about the world of crypto, and we've got these new coins that come to market that are hyped based on some celebrity or something along those lines.
Yes.
And then you get that rug pull. It goes up, 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 up. There's a huge amount of selling activity, predominantly from the people that are primarily were in the coin at the beginning.
Yep.
And because of that, it's unregulated. You've really got no recourse.
Exactly.
So
exactly,
it's a dangerous place to play.
You should, if you're gonna go into any of those meme coins or whatever, be very ready to lose all of your money.
You're gonna lose. Yeah.
Exactly. Be ready to lose the money. Don't expect it to be, I'm going to be rich and everything. Yeah, most likely the people who started the whole craze are the ones who are going to be rich, not you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so this is the finale. Drum rolls, please.
Oh, a bonus.
Yes, a bonus. This is the cliche one, which everyone has heard, but it is the truth. If it sounds too good to be true, it is too good to be true. So, when you think about investing, and this is another thing, a lot of people who are doing investing don't actually know about risk and return. They literally don't know the basics. So they will literally believe someone who comes to them saying, we're going to give you this amazing return with no risk.
Yeah, 50% a year.
That does not work. That's not how investing works. It's literally the opposite. If you're wanting such a huge return, you better be ready to lose all the money.
Yes. Yeah.
So if someone comes to you with it's a trade-off. If somebody comes to you with such amazing claims, it's a scam.
Yeah.
So don't buy any of that.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Okay. So I would like to ask you, if we're seeking to wrap up here, what's the one thing you feel that people can do right now or the number one thing to better protect themselves against scammers?
Okay, so listen, a lot of people when they hear my podcast episode, they're like, we're overwhelmed. What are we supposed to do now? There's so much happening. So I like to keep it very simple. So I'm going to give two things. I know it's just said one, but no, there's two. But these are simple things that I think if you did these two things, it would make a huge difference.
Yep.
The first one is literally the zero tolerance policy against any unsolicited contact of any type. If you literally do that, I think that will remove a lot of the problem. So just don't even engage at all, right? So that's one, big thing. The other one is, so there is this slogan that the National Anti-Scam Center is doing a national campaign right now, which goes stop, check, protect. And it's pretty much making people stop So the minute that they're getting excited over something and they about to jump into some investment scam, or they're about to jump on some hype or anything, is to kind of stop the urgent action taking and get people to actually reflect. Because a lot of times scammers get away with it because people don't talk to anybody.
Yeah.
They don't have time to actually think using their own brains, because even sometimes without even thinking or without even talking to other people, you can, after a bit, you're like, actually, that's dodgy. That seems off.
Yeah.
But people don't even give themselves that time. So if you stop and just take your time, days, weeks, whatever, you'll be surprised that you'll be like, okay, actually, that doesn't sound too good.
Yep.
And then look into things, look if somebody is coming to you saying, oh, we've got this investment scam. If, for example, in Australia, do they have an AFS license?
Confirming investment scheme.
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Confirming, like, just, okay, do they have an AFS license? What's the number? Actually check it on the ASIC website to make sure that they are the people who they say they are. There's so many checks you can do. So don't just take it, check. Yeah. There's so many things you can, double check, even literally ask them questions. So people sometimes are so shy about asking some dodgy person who's calling them about investing their money, but ask them questions. What's your name? What's your address? All this very basic stuff, and look into it. Even if they answer these questions, investigate them.
Yeah.
And then protect. If you feel like, oh, I've made some mistake, there's something I've done, quickly cut contact, then tell your financial institution, whether it's your credit card company or your bank or anyone else, just your super or anything like that. Tell them immediately, because urgent action really helps protect you as well. So those are kind of the things I think you can do right now.
Well done. Yep. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I have one suggestion, if I may, to add to that. And it's around volume-based transactions.
Yeah.
Very recently, we had contact from someone who had lost $250,000 because he was looking for the highest interest rate option available online. He found one that was just attractively nicer than the others, but not in a way that would look unusual. And it looked like, I'll leave out the bank's name, but it was a fairly common bank.
Yeah.
What he didn't realize is that that entire website was a scam website. And the letter, or one of the letters in the 5 letters of this particular bank, one of the letters was different.
Yeah.
And he didn't see it was ABCDE, but it was abcdf.com.au.
Yes. Yep.
And so he went in, he clicked through, he spoke to someone that had an Australian accent, seemed really confident, went through everything and said, yep, all good. Here's how you transfer the money. He transferred the money. Boom, gone.
Yes.
And so for mine, especially, like, really apply that, especially when you've got a high volume transaction.
Yes.
And hopefully we're at the point where you're at a point in your lives where you don't have all these really frequent high volume transactions, but if you are making the big transfer for whether it's a house deposit or whether you're making a big transfer because you want to buy that cruise, or you want to pay for that cruise or whatever, just take a moment, take 5 minutes before you hit transact to just think, is there any way that I could be a little bit more thorough here to make sure that this is exactly what I want? Because if this is wrong, the money's gone. Are there any other steps you can take? Yeah,
that is perfection. And I love, actually, one of the things you talked about, one of the biggest scams is like kind of imposter bond scams. And they get a lot of retirees because a lot of retirees are looking to safeguard their money. So maybe they're not looking at like crypto or anything too crazy. So they are doing exactly what this gentleman did. They're going online to look for, okay, fine, I'm not happy with the interest rate. I'm looking for something better. And then there's a lot of scammers who exactly have these, attractive, not too crazy. And then they reel people into their fancy looking websites, and a lot of people are losing a lot of money. So just because, another thing, red flag, just because somebody has a fancy website and sounds professional and they've got these fancy looking graphs doesn't mean that they're not a scam.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Wadzi, thank you so much for your time today. This has been terrific, and hopefully it's been really valuable for everyone listening.
Yep.
And I can't help but feel that we might have you on the show at some point in the future too, to talk more about this, because this is a developing space, and unfortunately scams are going to continue to get better and better, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. And thank you so much for having me. Absolutely loved it. I can talk about this all day. So it's good that we've got like a time limit. But yes, I would love to come back because like you said, you're right. Unfortunately, I wish this wasn't the case. They're constantly evolving. New things are constantly coming in. So it's a pleasure for me to be able to come back and, talk more in the future.
Okay. Well, thank you so much. And to all the listeners at the Australian Retirement Podcast, thank you. And looking forward to more wonderful episodes coming your way. Thanks.
Thanks for watching this video on the Rask Network. While you're here, don't forget to like and subscribe so you can get videos each and every day on business, finance, investing, and so much more.